Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command, and many other things. So very soon I'll be doing an update about Space Command and the Showrunners Network and all sorts of stuff that I'm working on. Very exciting news coming up, and we're busy at work finishing the second hour and getting it to all of you very shortly. So that is going to be coming up. I'm also going to be doing a number of Mr. Sci-Fi videos, continuing my history of science fiction with the movies of the 70s and the 80s, etc. So tons of stuff, including one I'm going to do that's called Weird Stuff I Believe, which should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, I've been catching up with some of the shows that other people have been making, not just me. And I wanted to talk about what I think The Expanse is getting right and Star Trek Discovery is not. Because I've watched the first several seasons of Star Trek Discovery. I'm really rooting for it. Doug Jones, who I think is very good as Saru, and of course is great in Space Command as one of our leads. I'm rooting for these people. I want everything to come out well. But here's why I think The Expanse is doing better in its storytelling than Star Trek Discovery. And for those who haven't watched Space Command, you can check it out, on the landing page of Mr. Sci-Fi. Definitely subscribe. We have a Patreon account. You can buy Space Command shares, etc. But let's just kind of get into it, because I watched the most recent version of The Expanse, the most recent episode, and I've also been watching Star Trek Discovery's new season. So let's just jump in. They come from a very different place, the two shows. Star Trek Discovery, of course, was the CBS's attempt to have sort of a flagship show on its new subscription channel, All Access, and so they pumped a ton of money into it, $10 million per episode, and it was set immediately before the original Star Trek series in the time of Captain Pike, but now they've jumped 1,000 years into the future, and meantime, The Expanse is based on a series of successful science fiction novels that I have down here. There's a bunch of them by the pseudonym James S.A. Corey, which is actually two writers, Ty Frank and another guy. And one of them was the assistant to George R.R. Martin, who has, I'm sure, been advising them. And these are novels that are set in a time when the solar system has been colonized and we encounter what's called the proto-molecule, and it leads to a gate to many other worlds being opened. And it's about the rivalries and frictions between the inhabitants of Earth and the human colonists of Mars and the human colonists of the belt, the asteroid belt, etc. And so let's just jump in higgledy-piggledy. I'll kind of give you an overview of The Expanse, and then I'll jump into Star Trek Discovery and kind of compare and contrast. The Expanse was developed for television by my friends Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby, and the show is run very, very well by Narain Shankar. They were the showrunners the first few seasons. Narain, I think, is largely the showrunner now. He came off Star Trek, which is where I met him on Next Gen and the later incarnations of Star Trek DS9 and Voyager and so forth. But all three of them are extremely solid writers and extremely good, nice people, really, really good people, and hard workers. And so Mark and Hawk came across these novels, and they jumped in, optioned it, took it to Alcon, got a deal, and it was originally picked up on the Sci-Fi Channel for the first few seasons, I think the first 3 seasons, and then Amazon picked it up for a 4th and a 5th season, and they've renewed it for a 6th season that I'm told will be the final season. And I actually even emailed Narain Shankar to say, what are you going to do with your sets? I'd sure like them. But we'll see. We'll see where that leads. But the show started off well. I've read all the novels, and I've read the novellas as well. And I really like the novels. And it's a very, very interesting future projection of where we might end up. It's trying to be very accurate in terms of the physics. It deals with acceleration and gravity wells and all that stuff. It's very interesting, and I had to follow it very closely because I didn't want Space Command to follow in those same footsteps. You're always trying to not replicate what others are doing. Unfortunately, I've managed to succeed in that. But The Expanse started as being a little grim, a little gray. The TV show, I didn't much care for the visual design because it was, again, kind of dark, and I really didn't like the spaceship designs particularly. It's gotten better and better and better each year, and I think it has more and more money in terms of the budget, though I really haven't discussed that with my friends. And but it looks really good now, and they have a lot of variety in terms of sets, a lot of variety in terms of visual effects. The visual effects have gotten better and better, and it really has a scope to it and a scale that it goes back and forth from Earth and Mars and the asteroid belt and the ultra-colonized moons of the solar system. And then last season was entirely on an alien planet. It's been following the basic structure of the novels. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that the two novelists, part of their deal in getting it set up as a TV show was that they be brought aboard as writer-producers on the show, which has happened. And I think that writing on the show has very much affected where the novels have gone to, because in the original novel, Jim Holden was written as a very engaging hero, and I think they might have intended for him to become a much major force moving through, and he's actually become less and less of a driver of the action. And whereas Naomi Nagata, who's played by Dominique Tepper very well in the show, she's become a stronger character, as has Amos, played by Wes Chatham. And so some of the stronger characters have become more dominant in the show and more dominant in the novels. And I think very probably the novels have gone in a direction that is different somewhat than they might have originally intended. At least that's my guess from reading all this stuff. Now, the show, it was a very fun mashup initially of a science fiction show and sort of a detective noir thing with Thomas Jane playing Joe Miller, this detective who's tracking this girl, and then it also was sort of a horror story dealing with the proto-molecules taking over people and using them for its various purposes. And it all worked well. It all worked well, and I liked the novels. Initially, I liked the novels better than the show, but I've come to really like the show as well. And it's a lot of people told me that the Expanse is hard initially to get into, and that's true. And then it gets better. David Strathairn was terrific in the show. I think the third season, I lose track, but just a phenomenal actor who I've always liked, and he was great in this. And the drummer, the character of drummer, is also really wonderful. Kara G plays Carmina Drummer, and she's Native American, or I guess Native Canadian, First Nation, and she's wonderful in that role too. So let me go on the strengths and weaknesses of The Expanse a bit. Jim Holden is played by Stephen Strait, and he's okay, but he seems to have one expression, and I think his lack of range may have caused them to diminish his role in as opposed to some of the actors who seem to be much stronger. For instance, Wes Chatham, his role of Amos, very interesting character, sort of the sociopathic character who affiliates with people who have a stronger moral sense, so that he's doing good rather than evil, because he's enormously capable of either, because he doesn't have an internal compass. And that his journey has been very, very interesting. He's very wonderfully acted. And as I mentioned, Dominique Tapper is very good as Naomi. A surprise popular character is Christian Avasarala, who's played by Shora Agadashu. So she's of Indian extraction, I suppose, East Indian extraction, but she's gotten stronger and stronger, the character and the actor both. Bobby Draper is played by Frankie Adams. She's a Marine from Mars. Again, she's been thrown in her lot with our heroes. Alex is played by Cass Anvar, and he's fun, if somewhat one note. But and then we have Nadine Nicole playing Clarissa Mao, who starts as a villain and now becomes much more of a heroine. But the fourth season I didn't like as well, because it was set on an alien planet, and it was kind of not that interesting to me. But this season's much better. Now, when I was reading the novels that this season is based on, a problem I had is they basically, in the first few seasons, the main characters were basically together on their ship, the Rocinante, which, by the way, is the name of Don Quixote's horse, interestingly enough. But also, so they were all sort of like the Star Trek surrogate family kind of group of characters who were together and were there for each other in the through thick and thin. But the novel started basically send the characters off in their own directions, and so rather than having unity, they started kind of building their lives apart from each other. And I found this somewhat structurally of a weakness, and I find it somewhat structurally of a weakness in the show. But that said, the stories, some of the storylines are so strong, and the stakes are such life and death, real world stakes, that it still is a very entertaining and very interesting show. And so you have essentially this season, you have Amos goes to visit Clarissa Mao when the Belters basically drop rocks on Earth and it causes a disaster. And he's in, I think, Baltimore, and he has to save Clarissa, which is a very interesting relationship. I mean, they have one scene of the two of them peeing, which I really didn't need to see. Thank you very much. But other than that, I like the characters, and I like that plot line. Naomi's gone back to see a son of hers, and the crazy messianic Belter guy, leader, who's leading him astray. There's some very interesting plot lines going on, and although it's a little spread out, it still works, and the effects are superlative, and and the cast overall is very, very strong. So I can recommend The Expanse highly. The 6th season should be interesting. The 5th season's going very well. And again, these are issues that the audience can identify with. This is life and death. This is people trying to connect with their children, trying to connect with other people in meaningful ways, trying to find a moral universe. There's nothing sanctimonious about this show. There's nothing speechifying about this show. And you deal with issues of terrorism and what terrorism is, and when we respond to terrorist acts by becoming equally villainous, equally terrorists against innocent civilians, we are basically taking on, we're becoming our enemy essentially, and so you have Christian Avasarala within the United Nations trying to be the voice of reason and the voice of sanity and the voice of de-escalation rather than escalation. These are all things that very much cue into our world and cue into human issues on the macrosphere and microsphere level, and so so we can all identify with many of these characters and their journeys and their struggles. On the other hand, we get Star Trek Discovery. Now, Star Trek Discovery is sanctimonious. They're all the time having these lectures about we're the Federation and we don't stand for this and we stand for that and blah blah blah, and it's really tiresome. And it's sort of like, and there's such triviality, and the goals that they're going after seem so away from human experience. They're not. Yeah, I mean, at least, and this is all speaking for myself. If you love Star Trek Discovery, fine. If you hate The Expanse, fine. I don't need everyone to agree with me, but and again, I don't mean to slam Star Trek Discovery. The actors are giving it their all. You can tell they're invested in it. The visual effects are terrific. The production values are very good. It's always been the writing that I've had problems with, and the reason is because, like, for instance, okay, this season, like the first 2 seasons, it was wacky, Mushroom Drive and time travel, Red Angels, and all this wacky stuff. Now, again, as I've said before, when I came up in television, every episode was self-contained because of the economics and the syndication rules and all these things. So each hour story was a separate storyline. And that allowed shows like the original Star Trek to have sort of a, if they had a bad episode every now and then, they'd have a good one the following week. Even Twilight Zone has some episodes that are like, not the best. But now that a show basically tells one story over a season, that story has to be really terrific, or it doesn't captivate, it doesn't engage. And the problem I have with Star Trek Discovery is, they have these stories that are extremely hard to follow, and over the season, and now they're in this odd one where it's like, okay, they've jumped 1,000 years into the future to save the universe, I guess, and the Federation no longer exists, or exists only in little trails of clues, and all of those ships with dilithium crystals blew up, and so now the Discovery is traveling, I guess, on Mushroom Drive, or are dilithium crystals, who knows? But they brought back the Mushroom Drive, which I think is a mistake personally, because again, The Expanse, you can fault it here and there from maybe not doing something exactly correct, but they're trying to get the physics right. And even the original Star Trek talked to the Rand Corporation and space scientists and so forth, and they were dealing with things like antimatter drives and warp engines and all that, but at least that was an extrapolation of existing science. Whereas the Mushroom Drive and tardigrades and all these weird things, I mean, I know tardigrades are real, but the way they're utilizing them is extremely dicey. you know. So okay, so they've traveled 1,000 years in the future, and they want the Federation to come back into power, and it's like, what, why exactly? And they're going hither and yon, and now they've brought the Trill back. And so the last episode I watched of Star Trek Discovery was Saru wants to do something nice for the crew, so he has a dinner for the officers, and it goes very awry because everyone's pissed off at everyone. And then the ship gives him a suggestion. It manifests apparently another personality, and it suggests that he show a Buster Keaton movie, which all the crew is laughing at, and it's just tiresome, just tiresome. It seems very, the feeling I get, and again, this may not be accurate, the feeling I get is that the writing staff is young and inexperienced and doesn't really know. I mean, that whole generation in the 60s, 50s and 60s of writers, Gene Roddenberry, Rod Serling, all these people who were coming up and writing brilliant, brilliant work, they, for the most part, had fought in World War II. They had seen life and death. They had seen suffering. They had experienced terrible suffering. Richard Matheson got trench foot, and Rod Serling was hit by shrapnel and almost died at one point when a Japanese soldier jumped up in front of him. And fortunately, a soldier behind him killed this guy, but Rod didn't know there was a soldier behind him, so he literally saw his own death in that moment. And these guys, although they were young, they were in their 20s and 30s, they had older souls, and they had a wealth of experience, and they wrote like angels. I mean, they really did. And but a lot of the younger writers now, they've watched other TV shows, they maybe have their various concerns, and I don't mean to trivialize their lives or insult them, but the storylines often feel very trivial and very distanced from true human experience. And the fact of that this episode was a dinner and a Buster Keaton movie and a and then Michael is going off to with this new character who's been introduced, who's a Trill, even though she's human, and she has to relink with her other personalities, and it's like, what the hell, what has this got to do with my life? Frankly. And and I always believe in researching stuff to a fare thee well, and so if you want to write a military person, go talk to soldiers, go watch their lives, really dig in. And but I mean, just Star Trek, and then I don't know who these people are. Doug Jones is the strongest character, Saru, but Michael, I don't know, Stamets, Tilly, Michelle Yeoh is playing Philippa. She's one note, as near as I can tell, one note. And there she's having dinner with Doug Jones. Now, in the first season, I guess, she was, because she's from the alternate universe, the dark universe, she was eating his species, and now she's at a dinner with him, and that has no resonance, no weight. They don't even reference it, of course. And it's insane. I mean, it's just like, you need to have a sense of who these people are. You want to take the journey with them. And I hang in there with Star Trek Discovery, but I always turn it off within a few minutes and then force myself to come back to it because I find it actively frustrating to watch. And whereas with The Expanse, I may not like Stephen Strait as well as I like some of the other actors. And again, he's doing his job. He's showing up and playing that character, and he's in very good physical shape. And I don't think he's just sloughing it off. But but these are, but The Expanse, I get a lot more from my viewing dollar, my viewing time. But I keep hoping that Star Trek will shape up. I wasn't a big fan of Picard either. Eventually, maybe they'll do the 7 of 9 series, which I would very much like to see, if not write for. And they're going to do, I guess, Captain Pike. Who knows? We'll see. But I think, really good shows. Breaking Bad's a very good show. Really good shows, whether they're dark or light or whatever they are, there's a feeling of they've got something to say. They know what they're talking about, and they've got something to say. And The Expanse succeeds in that by my lights, and Star Trek Discovery has never really gotten there. So, maybe the season will get better. I know certain other episodes have life and death consequences, but it's just, in a way, it's sort of like the Federation, they've already had the Federation be good, be evil, blah, 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 and so standing on that, you know, or staying on, we're all family here, we're all family together. It's just, these get to be very tired tropes. And it's a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. And for to use an old phrase. Anyway, so that's about it for now. If you haven't watched The Expanse, check it out. Hopefully you'll like it. And you know, if you're a huge fan of Star Trek Discovery, that's fine, because again, every one of us, any given TV show or movie or book that we encounter, it's a meeting of the minds between us, with everything we've experienced as individuals, and the people making the show. And so I am not in any way bad-mouthing anyone. Doug Jones is an angel of a person and a wonderful actor. And Anthony Rapp, you know, I've written for, and I very much like working with him, and I think he's a talented man, and as are many of these people. I mean, you know, Michelle Yeoh is a legend, and I thought she was phenomenal in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I thought Tilly had great potential, but they utilized her in such a trivial way that, you know, I mean, you gotta just, there's a way to develop characters, and there's a way to develop stories. And I think they're really, as always with Star Trek Discovery, I think they've really, really, really missed a major opportunity. So that's about it for now. I've meandered and mumbled and so forth, but I hope you got something out of it. So next time we'll be talking about a lot of other stuff. If you haven't seen Space Command, please do. If you aren't subscribed to Mr. Sci-Fi, please subscribe. We'll have lots to talk about very, very soon. And thanks for everything. It's really appreciated. And life is exciting. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll talk again next time. Bye, guys.